Welcome to the Sports Business Classroom audio experience. For the next few months, our show will be hosted by a rotating panel of industry leaders in their respective realms. Each host will bring on guests who they regard as experts in their field, so you can learn from the very best about the intricacies of the business of basketball.
Thanks again for joining us on another SBC podcast. We're featuring some of our former students, and in this edition, well, if you're on NBA Twitter, you know who this is. It's Mark Schindler, who covers the NBA for Basketball News. He's also covering the WNBA now for the league itself. Mark was a part of our 2020 virtual experience, and we're thankful and lucky enough to have Mark joining us as an instructor this year. That's how things have taken off for Mark. So, Mark, first of all, thank you for joining us, and congratulations on all your recent success. We're really proud of you.
Yeah, well, first of all, I really appreciate that. It's still weird to, kind of think about that being in the past tense. It feels like I was just doing SBC, this last summer, not too ago now, which is, going back and being there in Vegas this year is going to be entirely different. I finally just booked all my stuff for that. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Beau.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, tell me, first of all, let's go back to that experience, that specific experience, because I mentioned it was the 2020 virtual experience. The world's all of a sudden in a pandemic. And you are one of those people that took the chance and said, I'm going to still try to advance my career and increase my skills and improve myself during that time. What was your mindset, and why did you take that chance?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, I had thought about doing SBC before the pandemic started. I wasn't going to be able to afford it. And frankly, the pandemic happening, obviously terrible thing. I'm not happy that it happened for any reason, but
neither are we.
Yeah. But because of it, I was able to actually take the opportunity to go to SBC. I just decided, I had going into that year, I'd done my first year of communications school. So technically, the school I went to, University of Toledo, we didn't have a journalism school, but it was basically journalism school. You just call it communications. But I had done that for a year, and I still wasn't entirely sure. I was like, I think I really want to get into basketball because I love basketball. It's what I like talking about. I'd started, a podcast. I'd started doing a little bit of writing here and there. And I think to me, SBC is less about like going and making connections and stuff like that, more about like just proving myself as like, okay, this is me committing to doing this is what I want to do. And I'm going to go here and learn as much as I can from people who have done it or have done things similarly and see how I can apply that to what I want to do moving forward. And that really helped me with setting up what I needed to do the last 2 years of school and, making sure that I got myself set up for where I was headed.
What's interesting, and I listened to you on Alex Kennedy's podcast, and like I mentioned earlier, you'll be joining us with Alex Kennedy and Nikias Duncan out in Las Vegas at Summer League this year. But your story is interesting, and how you come to basketball is interesting because for a lot of us, I played high school basketball, and I've been around basketball my whole life. This was always something that you enjoyed, but not something you played, even though you were an athlete, right?
Yeah. So I was always somebody who would go and, play on the blacktop or whatever in the summers. I was never really all that good at basketball. I was much more a boxing person. Like I came up in football and hockey, and I transitioned into boxing, when I got to college at Michigan State. And I wasn't really sure, where I was going academically, but I was getting pretty good at boxing, and that, that fell off for a myriad of reasons, mostly injury. And I ended up having to take, a year and change off from school and really doing anything, to find out, where I was going, because everything I'd kind of been working for 3 or 4 years just fell apart like that. But also I just had, physically, I had to restrain myself from actually doing a lot. Cause I just, to be blunt, I had a heart injury pop up from overtraining. So, trying to really change up my entire lifestyle was different and very difficult.
Was it an addiction, like the training itself? Was it like you were just going hard and so hard? Or
it was more just with boxing, weight cutting is not a good thing. I think is the best way to put it. I'm in pretty good shape right now, and I weigh about 180. I used to fight at 152, so
Oh, geez.
Yeah,
Wow.
so you can imagine it's not great for your body, not great for your mindset either. So it took a lot of time to recover from that and figure myself out with that. And a lot of that was me getting further into basketball. Like every sport that I played growing up wasn't really fun for me. It was just kind of a thing I did. But basketball for me was never something I took seriously. You know, I always just had it on the background and enjoyed it. And I think in some ways basketball for me was, you know, kind of finding love for sport in the right reason, instead of, you know, some of the reasons that I'd done it before.
What is the right reason?
I think for me, I mean, I guess what makes it beautiful is that it can be different to anybody. But for me, the right reason is I just enjoy watching progress. I enjoy watching growth. And I think you see that in an 82 game season, or even, you know, even if it's just NCAA or, you know, watching high school, you see progress and development, and you see personality in the game. I think that's why I love basketball so much. You know, in a game where there's only 5 players on each side, and so much of it is about control, like, you know, what a player can do to impact the game. I would argue in basketball is, you know, almost more heavy-handed than anything else. That's a team sport.
Yep.
And I think you see personality and style and flair and, you know, who somebody is in their game, more than you do in almost anything. And to me, that really draws me to it.
I'm interested. We talked about this before we started taping here. You come to this sport as a boxer, and not, I mean, you advanced pretty far in boxing. You were a good boxer, and you had hopes and you had dreams. Uh, I had mentioned to you that you know, the famous line is boxing is the sweet science. And when I read your work, I see a lot of analysis and
Mhm.
a guy who really thinks things through. I don't know if it's all sports or maybe boxing. Has that influenced the way you view the game at all?
It's actually really funny. I think it has, but not in the ways that you'd think. Like, I think
Okay.
you're definitely in the right vein. Like a lot of what I do is analysis, you know, both of who we are as human beings and just of basketball itself. Like I really try and be fair and nuanced in how we talk about things, and sometimes overly nuanced, but that's also just who I am. But I think
But
for
this
me,
is a
like,
guy who took a year off to think about things, right?
yeah, no, that's a good point. I think I look at everything more in, you know, have you heard the term feel in basketball before?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think so often we look at that, and feel for the game is, you know, talking about how people are seeing things on court, how quickly they're reacting, you know, how they adapt to things. I was a low feel athlete. Like I was very bad at taking coaching. I was terrible at taking coaching, honestly.
Well,
And I
and you were drawn to an individual sport.
Yeah, and so that's that. You know, makes it all the more exciting. But I think I was definitely somebody who relied a lot more on doing things physically, and I always struggled to take what my coaches said and apply it on court. And I think you know, that's something that I've always taken. You know, especially in coming across and trying to, you know, get a better hand and understanding of basketball. Diving into the analysis and trying to understand things. And one of the things I really like doing, like I interviewed Brittney Sykes a couple weeks ago. He plays for the LA Sparks, really good player. You know, has been up for Defensive Player of the Year a few times. And we went through clips together. Like, what are you seeing? How are you
Oh,
processing things?
wow.
And I think that's the kind of stuff I would love to see more of, just the media in general, and make happen. Because I mean, I think it's easy as a fan, you know, seeing certain things play out, you know, from your bird's eye view. But like, even like I went through like a pick and roll with Brittney, and she's like, she asked me to pause, and she's like, I missed that pass right there, and I have no idea why I didn't see it when I was out on court. And
Did
like,
she enjoy the experience though? Did
oh
you
yeah,
sense
she
that like
loved
her
it.
brain
Yeah,
was activated and you're getting a different response by going through this?
yeah, no, it was really cool.
No, that's fascinating. I did well, you know, we've talked about how you go through it from an analytic standpoint, or at least an analytical standpoint. You know what I do. I call
Mhm.
highlights and top 10 and stuff like that. I once did a feature on Jerry Stackhouse. I wrote a feature, and I brought
One of my
him.
favorite players. I love
Yeah,
Jerry
yeah, yeah. Brought him
Stackhouse.
down at NBA TV into this office, and I showed him, and I said, I just want to watch you, and I want you to talk me through this. I showed him his reverse dunk at Duke as a North Carolina player.
Hmm.
And, you know, as a North Carolina fan, I was very much into it anytime I see it. But to see that guy who did that thing, he was as into it or more than I
Yeah.
was. It wasn't old to him. It was something that he was passionate about. I think it's refreshing sometimes like your experience with Brittney, to see somebody who they're at the top of their profession, but they're really still passionate about that, and activating that in their minds maybe gives you something in an interview.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, it's so much of what we try and project about the game is stuff that we don't really, I don't want to say we don't know. There are people with inside information, but like, I mean, like, again, not to keep using the same example, but talking to Brittney, I was like, hey, like, what are you seeing here? And in that play, when she's like, oh, well, I missed the Shanae Ogumke, who obviously plays for the Sparks as well and does NBA Countdown, a lot of great stuff for ESPN. She's like, I hadn't gone back and seen this clip yet, but I remembered, Shanae and I talked about that on the bench, like, Brittney, you missed me under the basket, and Brittney not knowing, like, she was like, I hadn't seen it, and going back through, like, immediately, like, she puts her head in her hands, like, no, like, I see it now, and so seeing that kind of stuff is really cool, because I think part of the reason I like doing this stuff is, and not to get like overly personal with it, but I struggled a lot with, I didn't deal with nearly as much pressure as, any of these professional athletes do, but I dealt with a little bit of it, and it like absolutely crushed me, man. I was terrible at handling it. I didn't know how to respond with it, and it was a big reason for why I struggle in my sport. And I think a large reason for why I try and do things the way that I do or want to do in basketball is because I think there's in some ways, like, it's good to hype up things and make them seem bigger than they are. But I also think it's just as important that instead of some of the like, there can be some really good human interest stories, but I also think that there are some that, do a lot more of this, again, projecting things as a lot bigger than they are, rather than just being open and honest and be like, hey, this is human. Like, there is error here. And like, no, this person isn't a superhuman. Like, look at all this stuff that they do to get here. I think so often it's just looking at what happens on the court instead of
stuff.
Everything that, the 97% of what goes on before that. And so I like really trying to dive into and extrapolate.
As a guy who was a boxer, process would interest you, right?
Yeah, process is really important, especially, like for fights. I mean, you're putting in, 2-3 months of work sometimes before you do something that's going to at best last a half an hour. So, I think when we see an 82 game season, I think a lot of fans just see it as, and even some analysts just see it as like, oh, they're just playing the games, but there's a lot more going on than just playing the games.
I don't know if you remember this, but probably early 2021, you and I had a conversation on the phone, and I called you as a student from the year before and said, what do you want to see more of? What do you want to see? What's helped you? What works for you? And what you told me, one of the things you told me that's improved your career is social media. And Twitter and stuff like that. So for prospective students coming along, at least tell them your experience and why you think it's helped you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I took away from SBC, and even more so, I think I would just say my time after SBC, is that there is no roadmap, there is no blueprint, there is no concrete pathway. I think that's the biggest thing I can reiterate to anybody who's trying to quote unquote follow in mine or others' footsteps. I think all you can do is really take what other people have done and apply it to your situation and where you're coming from. Because I mean, none of us are going to have the exact same circumstances or personalities or any kind of environment. I think that's important to remember, because I think I used to be somebody who was always like, okay, well, what is the blueprint? What do I have to do to do this? And I thought everything always had to be regimented and this and that. And I really struggled to do things without having, a perfect plan. Like, I was a person who very annoyingly had 25 alarms on my phone every day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, it was bad. That was me.
Where's that come from?
Just trying to stay on top of everything. I don't really know where it came from, but yeah, I've worked that out of my system. But point being, like, I think that especially in trying to get into something as competitive is the wrong way to put it, but just I would say scarce as a job in professional sports.
It's competitive. It's fair to call it competitive.
Yeah, but I think, like, at least
the weird thing is we're all friends, but it's competitive.
Exactly. It's competitive, but I think with competitive comes like this idea that there's like nastiness, and for the most part, I haven't experienced that.
I feel like I'm happy to see everybody that works in this business when I see them.
No, exactly. But point being with that, like, I think the year and change after SBC was really me just like that. Going to SBC was what really forced me to take the initiative of just doing and trying anything and everything. Like I think that's the biggest thing that I've done and taken away from it. I think in some ways, I've definitely overtaxed myself over the last 2 years, but I kind of needed to, with how things worked with school. It helped that everything was online for me again. So it was different situations. But because everything was online, okay, I took up a job working at SB Nation for pretty minimal pay, doing close to full-time work while being on not even, like a bare minimum freelance salary. And part of that was me doing way more than I needed to, but also if you have a platform.
Let me ask you this though, real quick before you go on. Did that pay off for you? Do you think?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Like,
so there's a lesson in that.
Yeah, no, I think it's again like there's it's different for everyone, but I think for me, especially getting into media, the biggest, like I keep saying the biggest thing I can iterate, but like there are multiple things. But one of the other things, like you are not going to get a full-time job in media right away. Like I work like 3 or 4 freelance jobs rotating to try and make things work, ends meet, and I'm hopeful that will eventually lead to a full-time job. I'm pretty confident it will, but a lot of it is, saying for love of the game sounds dumb, but like I just love doing this.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. But like, I mean,
Yeah.
you can attest to you miss out on a lot because of it. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat it. But I think, gosh, I lost my track a little bit.
What I think what you're saying is that there is a commitment that you have to make, and you made it at SB Nation, and you're going and you're working, and it's not easy because you're giving yourself, trying to find full-time work, and you're not getting paid as much as you might think you'd like to get paid, but that's the sacrifice you had to make to get where you are today.
Yeah, exactly. Like I took over the podcast for them. It was something that only needed to be once a week, and I did it like a daily podcast for roughly an entire season. And I got to interact and meet people in a way that I didn't really, I didn't expect. But I think a lot of it was what you make of the opportunity. Because I looked at it and it was more, especially with media, it's not like. Maybe it changes once you get a full-time job. I don't know. But like, it's hard to be in media without it being full-time if you're going to be doing it seriously. Like I think you like, I mean, even if you're being paid part-time or freelance, like you have to be tapped in and on top of everything. And also because you want to be.
Well, you don't want to be caught out and look like you're not giving your all to the product you're providing to your listeners, viewers, readers.
Exactly. Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I think it's a fine line of like, you have to be willing to try and do everything and in different ways too, to find what works best for you. But also you don't want to just be throwing crap at the wall and not having it be your best, because I do think like there's obviously a balance of like, okay, well, I'm going to force myself to write something in this amount of time, and then I'm going to go through my editing process and make sure that it's good and ready to go. And there's a difference between doing that and also saying, well, I'm just going to throw up 300 words right now and call it a day.
How critical are you of your own writing?
Oh God, very. That's really? Something I'm trying to work on.
I'm not surprised by this.
I was just talking to Mir and Fader about this the other day. Because
she's the best.
She is. She was really nice too. I mean, it's something I really struggle with. I think there's a lot of people who do enjoy my work. It's very much so like, I think there are things that, what's really difficult, and part of like you mentioned a little bit with social media, which I'm sure we'll get into more of, some of my stuff that's the least interacted with is the work that I most enjoy doing or most appreciated or thought that was my best work. And then I've had other things where I was on deadline at like 8 a.m. and I woke up at 5:30 to write it, and I went through with one edit, and I was like, all right, here we go, it's ready at 7:55. And it ended up being one of the most interacted with or engaged with things that I'd written. And it just kind of depends sometimes. Like I think trying to get to a place where you're accepting of your work and just noting like, okay, I do the work. Every time
you take a real athletic approach to your writing.
I guess. Yeah. I guess I hadn't thought about it like that.
I mean, you're really, really driven and grinding on this stuff. And I think that's a good thing. What would you like to improve on as a writer?
Well, something that I've been dipping my toe into a lot more, especially now that I'm covering the W, and I have a lot of access. I really want to get better at feature writing. Like I like telling stories. I like getting to talk to people and get to know more about them, and also just show people who these athletes are about. That's not in a way that's like making them look like they're superheroes because they're just humans like anybody else.
You're almost
So
demystifying, right?
yeah, definitely. But
The
also in like
anti-David Stern in a way.
yes. Oh god. Yeah. Anti-David Stern in many ways, but yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Like I think that's something I'm trying to work on. And I've really enjoyed the process of doing that. Um, but also I really want to just improve on being a little bit kinder to myself in the process because I think that
You
there's
realize the success you've had, right?
now and
When I
again.
say that to you, how do you receive that?
I mean, I like chuckle to myself a little bit. I don't know if I'm there yet, but I guess like there has certainly been success up until now. There's a lot more that I want to do, for sure. And it's not even about doing anything. It's more just getting to that place where uh I'm not, on month-to-month paychecks will be, I think that'll be the most gratifying
Understood.
thing that I can
Understood.
I can imagine. I'm almost at the stage where I'm like, wow, I would literally work just about anywhere if I didn't have to worry about, meeting my quota of articles this month or something like that.
Ah, our friends in
Um,
the background.
yeah, that's my guy Moose. He's a
Yeah.
really good dog. But
If you've seen Moose on Twitter, if you're
you
following
have
along.
definitely seen Moose on Twitter. If you follow me, he's very active on my Twitter.
um, Tell me about if you had some tips for a student that's coming to SBC this year to prepare. What tips would you give them to prepare themselves for the experience that's coming their way?
Yeah, I think the number one thing would be if you're going to spend the money to be at SBC, be there. Do not treat this as a joke. Do not treat this as something that's just, like a cocktail party on the weekend. Because I know some people who did that, and that frustrated me greatly when I was there. Again, everybody has their own journey, but also, you have people who are dedicating, committing their time to this that you do not get that amount of time with in the
Yep.
real world. Like
Yep.
I'm lucky if I get to talk to somebody for 10 or 15 minutes based on how quick things can go in the industry right now. Getting to have like I'm trying to remember who we talked to for like an hour. Like, um, gosh, like we talked to like Mark Jones for an hour, or we had like scouts who came in that talked to us for like an hour and a half and ran through things for like 2 hours. Like Charles Dugray, who
Yeah.
came in
Yeah.
and scouting session with us for
He's going to be
like
there
a
this year.
3 hour scouting session. He was great. But like again, like that's just not super normal stuff to be able to actually get the opportunity to sit down and talk with some of the like the best people doing this. Like I mean, even I'm just like lucky, like I got to form like a nice relationship with like I knew Dave before coming in, of course, we were
Yep.
friends already. But like I got to know Wes a little bit, who of course
Yep.
works in the Kings front office now, and like he ran pretty much everything on the team side that we were
Yeah.
doing at SBC. Like that matters. Getting that kind of just getting to talk to people and know people. Like I think again off of that as well, like I think you guys hit on this pretty well, but it's something that I've thought of even more is do not treat this like LinkedIn. Like don't come in being like, I'm here to make connections. Like, no, just be here, be yourself. Um, that's the most authentic thing you can do. Like, don't just come in here looking to meet people because it could help you in the long run. Like, I think you have to be here because you want to be here. You love basketball, you want to learn, and you want to understand more about the people here. Like I think that's a really important way to look at it.
What do you think the future is for a person in your role coming up in the media? What does that look like? I mean, you're sort of starting to turn the corner yourself, and I know it's tough still. But the next person that comes up in 4 years, what does that look like for that person as they try to come along?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that's something I'm trying to weigh right now still. I know a lot more is trending towards audio and video. Like I don't think writing's ever going to go away to be certain, but
Yeah,
like again, there's a lot more towards multimedia. I think it's a lot more of you aren't really just going to be specialized in one thing. Like it's a lot of you need to be capable of doing a lot of things and doing them well. Like it's not just I can be good in front of the camera and that's it. Like you have to be able to do everything. You have to, okay, like even in school, my senior year project was basically having to write my own TV script, do my own broadcast, be
Oh,
able to direct it, be able to be in front of the camera. And like part of it was like I worked at like my communication school was like one of the top 10 or 15 in the country in terms of how we ended up ranking out at the end of the year. But again, like a lot of it's, you have to be able to do everything. Because ultimately to get to where you want to be for the most part, it's hard to just do one thing and find like there's not just necessarily some lane to get you there. So I think to me, like media it's definitely changing. I do think there's going to be kind of a shift back because a lot of people
shift back to what?
I'm not sure what the shift back is to. I think that because right now a lot of full-time jobs are drying up. Like
Yep.
everything is transitioned a lot to contractors and freelance, but also a lot of people that I know and I, grew up reading or was fans of reading transition to doing like Substack or doing Patreon. And like, if you have a big enough following, that works. And I do
Yeah.
think that we're going to trend back to somewhere where, it's
But
going to
you're
be a
involved
lot
with
more,
that yourself, right?
yeah. And I think, to a degree, it's going to end up being a lot more just content driven. Like, okay, who creates the best content and can we get it? Like, I think is going to make a big difference because there's just been a push from a lot of places. And it's not to say that they're doing it wrong, but like, it's just been a push of like, all right, we got to get as many clicks as possible. We need you to like, there was a place that I turned down that asked me to write, I think it was upwards of 15 articles a week.
Oh,
And
gosh.
I turned that down. Like, I was like, I can't do that. It's not how I work.
It's not healthy.
Yeah, it's not exactly.
No.
And I do think we're going to turn away from that because it's just, that's maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but I do think that I'm starting
You know
to
what
see some
though?
people that's gonna change.
And here I am. I'm going to make a huge generalization, but I do think maybe the really talented people that are younger and in this business have a set of values that they're going to value their mental health. They're going to value things like that. I hope
Mhm.
they do because 15 articles a week is not easy business. It's
Yeah,
really
even if
not.
it's only like 500 to 700 words, like that's a lot.
That's a ton.
Yeah.
And to try to do it well is nearly impossible. What are you enjoying about your stuff with the WNBA?
Oh my God, everything. The league is awesome. Like I can't iterate that enough. It's different in some ways. Like I actually would say I'm more careful on Twitter with the WNBA just because the players are so active on Twitter. Like I've never been somebody who's ever going to say anything out of turn or unfair about a player on Twitter. But like even like I always think to myself, I'm like, okay, is this clip going to make somebody look bad? Like I want to be careful.
Well, I heard you say on Alex's podcast that you're struggling to be critical because you care about the feeling, I guess, of the person, right?
It's less about feeling. I think it's more like I get really engrossed in some of the micro things and what makes a player like what makes each player unique. And I do think in some ways like I need to be better at being critical. Even just basketball all around, I think is something I'm trying to work on, being more critical. I think it's easy for me to see the upside of things and harder for me to see the downside sometimes, or at least harder for me to elaborate on the downside. But that again, like I think that's a work in progress for me, but also it's just how I like looking at it. To be honest. But
What are you looking forward to at Summer League this year, besides spending your time with us?
yeah. Well, obviously the copious amounts of whiskey that's going to be received by myself from you is the
Yep, that's
idea.
big.
But no, what I'm looking forward to most in summer league is just kind of relaxing. If I'm being honest, like I'm looking forward to teaching this class because I think I have a lot of things that I can share, and I'm excited to answer some questions too. But honestly, like this has been a really long season for me in a good way. Like I think this has been one of the most important years of my life, and now I'm setting things up for myself moving forward and just getting to know more about myself and getting to make some really great relationships and friendships throughout this year. So this I'm only going to be in Vegas for 3 days, but it'll be nice to just kind of sit around, watch some basketball, and catch up with some of my friends who live around the country that I haven't gotten to see since last summer league. So I'm looking forward to that.
We're looking forward to having you, man, and catching up and everything like that. And like I said to start this thing off, we're really proud of you. Dave Dufour, like you mentioned, is a guy that it's a student who made it and is doing well in media, and he has sort of an analytical approach to the game as a former coach. But you're doing some of the same stuff. So we're really proud of you and the trajectory you're on. I want everybody to know, if you aren't following Mark, and just so everybody knows, Mark's already passed me in followers on Twitter. He's zoomed right on past me. It's at MG_Schindler. That's SCHINDLER. Anything else I need to promote for you?
No, I think that's it, man.
Okay. Well, we will see you soon, Mark. And again, thanks so much for spending this half hour with us. And we look forward to the hour we get to spend with you at SBC.
Thanks for having me, Beau.